Guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and today we're going to talk about the crossover event, Invasion. I wanted to talk about Invasion for over a month now, when they first announced that the Supergirl, Flash, Green Arrow, and DC's Legends of Tomorrow crossover would follow this event storyline. Unfortunately, I had a lot to cover, and I kept putting the story off. 1 month ago, I would have had an exclusive, because I've never seen anyone else cover this story before. But he who hesitates. So this story starts off with an alien race called the Dominators, who have captured 50 humans from Earth. The Dominators are clearly in charge, but they have another race of aliens with them, the Khund, who are herding the humans into a clearing of this strange world where testing is done by the Dominators. The action starts pretty quickly as several different weapon systems are activated and they slaughter the humans indiscriminately. Yeah, really gruesome stuff. They have weapons like the Voltmaster Zap Voxes, chem bombs, incendo torches, ground mines, bacterial swish pots, and protean slime bombs. They killed indiscriminately and they took no chances. These are the most devastating weapons created by the galaxy's most inventive weaponsmiths. Through all this killing, only 7 humans remained alive, although one of those 7 was severely wounded. The plan of the Dominators was actually genius, it's just the application that was flawed. Grab random people from Earth, try to kill them, and see which humans develop superpowers. It's really a genius idea. Maybe not for the story, but certainly for DC as a whole. It may not seem like it today with all the mutants being killed off, but the mutants were the biggest deal to ever hit comics in a very, very long time. No joke. The X-Men blew up and just everything had to be X-Men. The New Mutants sold well. X-Factor sold well. There were so many mutant-related titles that just really sold simply because they were supposed to be mutants. They even tried to make characters mutants who weren't actually supposed to be mutants, like Cloak and Dagger and Falcon. None of them actually panned out. DC clearly wanted in on the action, but they needed a way to create mutant-like characters, so they didn't need to have an elaborate origin story for every new character they made. The idea of mutants was actually perfect in Marvel, because the hardest part about making a new hero is, well, how did the hero get his powers? If you simply say, oh, yeah, they got the powers because they were born with the powers, that's perfect. And they just go right into how awesome the character is. And then whether a character flops or succeeds doesn't matter, because at least they were able to get the character out. If a character flops, you don't have to try and salvage that totally awesome origin story that you made for the character, right? DC needed this in the worst possible way, and they did it a very excellent way, the metahumans. And what they did was they actually made it sort of like how the Inhumans worked, and that's perfect. In this crossover event, Invasion, they could have done just that. The planet Earth produces massive numbers of metahumans, and the Dominators want to know why and find a way to replicate it. To do this, they'd have to locate the human gene that allows for the metahuman potential, but that potential, they rightly decided, would be activated by stress, like 20 cannons of different forms of death firing at you. Now, while the theory is good, I did say that the application was actually flawed, and it is, because, sorry, scientific background, when push comes to shove, 50 people from across the planet is simply not a workable sample size. You're going to need like 1,000 people from a fairly isolated area. You could even use latitude-longitude lines to make grids and say 1,000 people from somewhere in this grid and 1,000 people from this grid and so on and so forth. This way you actually get a proper sample size. Regardless of anything, you'd actually be able to have an isolated bunch and say, we have more samples from here that actually work, and then you could find out reasons why, based on their location. Regardless, the 6 who survived unscathed have definitely exhibited metahuman behavior, and they would have to be studied for more tests. To the Dominators, they wanted to eliminate the Earth because we humans have such great potential, yet it's unpredictable. In the other races and species of the universe, there is little genetic variance, but with humans, any one of us has the potential to be a metahuman, and since we cannot unite as a people, we could involve others in our wars and even spread our personal battles to other planets. The original math that they did was such that they expected 1 of the 50 to have survived, but when 7 survived, that terrified the Dominators, because it meant that the metahuman gene was more prevalent in humans than they thought. For this reason, they rushed up their plans. Basically, they want us dead because we have way too much potential and we scare the bejesus out of them. One particularly ambitious minor castling steps forward and tries to offer some advice about the metahumans, but he's quickly quieted in scorn. The Dominators do not have individual names, but rather they're separated into different castes, distinguishable by the size of the red circle on their foreheads. The larger the circle, the more prominent your caste. When I read this comic back in the late 80s, I actually imagined that they were like all trying to get on a ride, at an amusement park. And, they got like the little dragon or the clown that says you have to be this high to get on. Imagine the guy going like this and, your circle has to be like this big in order to join this cast meeting. Sorry. The next step in their plan is to eliminate our allies, and that means the Green Lanterns. Now this comic came 8 months after the Green Lantern Corps Volume 1, number 224, which was the last issue of that series. This comic ended with the power battery on Oa being saved from the catastrophe by all but 4 Green Lanterns sacrificing their rings, so there are very few lanterns left. Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner are the last 2 from Earth. However, many ringless lanterns still had a great deal of influence with the people of their sectors, so the Dominators had assassins eliminate many of these former lanterns. Several other races have elected to join the Dominion in what would be called the Alliance. Those races are the Citadel, Daxamites, Durlans, Gildishpan, the Scions, the Spider Guild, the Warlords of Okara, the Thanagarians, and of course, the Khund. Apocalypse was also offered a partnership, but Darkseid killed the messengers and returned their heads with implanted messages stating that Apocalypse will never get involved and that the Dominions are on notice. They may destroy all the humans that they want, but leave the planet Earth itself alone, because he had reasons to believe that the anti-life equation is there, and that the Alliance would incur Darkseid's wrath if it itself was damaged. This is the perfect in-story reason for the Dominators to not just show up on Earth and just boom, blast them all out of space. The Spider Guild volunteers to run the Starlag, a gulag prison colony for the upcoming war. And the Alliance really does call for war on Earth. Most planets and races call for neutrality with the Alliance for various reasons. Some disagree with the Dominion but fear their power. Some agree with them that Earth is dangerous, but they still fear the Dominion. Some just honestly do not care. Adam Strange turns himself into the Alliance in order to spare Ron from the Alliance's wrath, because most in the galaxy know that they employ the human for aid. Strange is immediately thrown into the Starlag prison colony, where he's able to spy for some time before the Zeta beam wears off and he's sent back to Earth, where he's immediately recaptured by an advanced contingent of the Khund. A huge First Strike Battalion is sent to Earth where they beachhead on Australia and obliterate all resistance, establishing a base/prison camp there. Everyone in Melbourne is killed, just to be sure of no resistance. Australia is chosen because they'd calculated that they will meet the least metahuman resistance there. In fact, the only metahuman that they reach there is Tasmanian Devil, and he's not really that cool. Several random events happen here. The Daxamites learn that they develop powers just like Superman while under the yellow sun. The Spectre wants to join the battle and seek vengeance for Australia, but he's denied by the Lords of Order, whom he answers to, because his involvement would bait the Lords of Chaos to enter the fray too, thus escalating the problem. Spectre spends the rest of his time during this conflict convincing the other magic users of Earth to not get involved, as the same fate would occur if they resisted the Alliance. Several crossover events happened at this time with many other DC titles called First Strike. It was only a single issue in each comic title, and they all involved the heroes' immediate reaction to the invasion. These single issues took place in between Invasion's issues number 1 and number 2. The Dominators inform the United Nations and the greater countries around the world that a diplomatic solution can be made and no further bloodshed will be necessary if the Earth as a whole simply surrenders their superheroes. This is a bluff, of course, as the Alliance plans on eradicating all the Earthlings anyways, as they know that humans will always evolve more metahumans. The nations of Earth debate the issue and respond with a resounding no, emphasized by the Daily Planet's front page splash article. The United Nations decides to fight and sends in their heroes. Every hero and team, for the most part, gets in on the action in one way or another. Superman goes directly to the leader of the Alliance and sues for a 24-hour peace, at the end of which he's told that all of the superheroes must be turned in. The heroes, for their part, have decided against that and want to begin a full-on offensive against their base in Australia. Captain Atom leads the hero initiative, and Batman challenges him, asking how they can attack when there aren't enough heroes with sufficient power sets to spearhead the attack. Amanda Waller steps in and says that they'll be employing the supervillains too. Of course. I mean, she's the owner of the Suicide Squad. The only thing that she could ever possibly add to any conversation would be, if we got the villains to join in, then it would help. The attack goes almost too well, and the tedious bonds of the Alliance threaten to be undone as Alliance forces all over the planet are repelled. The Daxamites eventually go 5-on-1 against Superman and are winning, but they are poisoned by one of the hundreds of trace elements in the Earth's atmosphere. The Kundians leave them to die, but Superman helps and saves them. They are so impressed that they decide that they are on the wrong side of the battle and leave the fray. Just when all seems lost for the Alien Alliance, the minor castling from much earlier in the story reveals that he has discovered and isolated the metagene that lies dormant in select members of the human race. He has also found a way to neutralize that gene, robbing Earth of its metaheroes. It will take some time to reach Earth, though. The Daxamites, in appreciation and honor of Superman's gesture and witnessing the heroes of Earth, switch sides and send for Daxam reinforcements. The Dominator leaders and the Kurdian leader argue in a command ship, and one of the Dominators reveals a surrender button and a self-destruct button. He makes to push the self-destruct, aiming to take out the Earth with an incredible explosion, but he's possessed and pushes the surrender key. The Kund kills him and the other Dominator, and then shoots himself in the head. Deadman is revealed to have been responsible. Even the space gulag of the Spider Colony is waylaid thanks to the Omega Men and the original human survivors from the beginning of the story who demonstrated the metagene. They now call themselves the Blasters. Aside from the Kund and the Dominion, all the other hostile alien races surrender unconditionally. Aquaman is the most compassionate and sees to it that all the races are allowed to leave, vowing never to return. The Kund and the Dominion are to be escorted back by the Daxamites, who have vowed to protect the Earth as if she were their own. After the second of 3 books was over, the Invasion Aftermath stories hit many of the DC titles for an issue. In the beginning of the 3rd and final issue, the lower caste member of the Dominion reaches Earth, drops and detonates his gene bomb, and departs for his homeworld. Several heroes, like Batman, have no idea what just happened, but the meta-heroes, who are quickly becoming depowered, understand fully. The powers of many of the metahumans are going out of control thanks to the gene bomb. The heroes are quarantined off-planet by the remaining Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner, and others who don't rely on the metagene, like Martian Manhunter and Superman. They meet up with the Omega Men and hyperspace travel to the Dominion's homeworld. They'd intercepted a communication that revealed the minor castling responsible for the metagene bomb was in custody and being tortured for his antidote. The Dominators are not happy to discover that the minor castling defied orders as he did. The main reason for the invasion was to cultivate the metagene for their own use and then kill the humans. Now they may never have the secret. One of the Blasters has the ability to teleport himself and one other individual, simply by snapping his fingers. He teleports Martian Manhunter to the surface, who disguises himself as a superior caste member, and enters the prison where the minor castling is kept, and steals the antidote from his mind telepathically. The antidote requires a high-tech lab, and the closest, safest lab is at the Starlag prison base, where the Omega Men and the Blasters just escaped from. They are detected as they make to leave, and are intercepted by 3 warships. The Green Lanterns and Superman make quick work of the ships. The heroes return to Earth with the cure. The so-called Alliance members will battle each other, having all placed the blame for failure on each other for a long time. Okay, here's my opinion on the Invasion storyline. I thought that it was well thought out. There were very good, interesting, and logical reasons as to why certain of the most powerful beings had to be eliminated from the particular battle. You can't eliminate Superman or Martian Manhunter because, I mean, come on, really? A crossover event without Superman? Regardless, it was great and very well executed in that regard. They made a Daily Planet edition comic for the Invasion, and they explained a lot of what needed to be understood. This allowed readers to decide if they wanted to read any of the crossovers while still picking their interest. There were a lot of very cool shoutouts at the time, like Lots of Wrestling Corporation and Flo, the Fabulous Ladies of Wrestling, which is a clear ripoff, but homage to Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, which actually existed back in the day. They also had a very cool want ad in the comic that asked for a sidekick. They were hiring for a sidekick, preferably one with some circus performing background, so that was very cool. Some heroes actually died. I mean, nobody particularly important, just some guys from the Omega Men and so on and so forth, but it was actually interesting. It made the comic relevant. Guys, while Marvel has several different terms for several different kinds of heroes, DC usually uses only one term, and that term is metahuman. This was the comic line that started. Issue number 1 was actually the first time that the term metahuman was used. Trivia. Love and hate. There's actually a really cool little part in there, just a single panel that said that during the invasion crisis, while most of the nations had gotten together and actually started working together to attack the invaders, like the Russian Air Force, the Americans, and all sorts of different countries came together to attack them, a nation called Baalia had invaded their neighboring country of Kunish. That was interesting because it showed that, you know, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Several new series sprung from this crossover storyline, namely The Blasters, Legion 89, a Spectre miniseries, and Justice League Europe. The series was overall fulfilling. It actually felt like a real event. The last issue, the third of 3, wasn't quite as good, but as a whole, overall, yeah, it was good. Now, some problems that I had with Invasion. At one point, they said that something seemed very Orson Wellesian. You know, writers, really? You can't just look up that word. I get it. We're very spoiled today with the internet, but I don't think it would have been that hard to think Orson Welles. You know, he wrote 1984 most prominently, and Animal Farm has something to do with it also. But when you have something that is Orwellian, it's not called Orson Wellesian. That was actually kind of confusing. They destroyed Melbourne, and most of Australia, really. I mean, really? Todd McFarlane drawing the heroes. Everyone looks like Spawn, long before there even was a Spawn. Seriously, I can only imagine him drawing Thor, who actually is supposed to have the cape that goes up. Crying out loud, the thing would have been like a skyscraper, you know? Look at my cape. They keep calling each other by name. We've got them on the run, Wonder Woman. Well, let's keep them that way, Starman. Yeah, okay, Starman, maybe not everybody knows who he is, but who the heck doesn't know who Wonder Woman is? And they kept on doing that. I mean, they even did it with Superman and Batman. Hello? Maybe you don't know who Booster Gold is. Maybe you don't know who Animal Man is. Maybe you really do look at Metamorpho and say, who the heck is this guy? But for the love of God, I mean, some of these characters, you know who Flash is. And like I'd said, Part 3 actually felt like something of a different story. I almost feel like they could have just made it into an actual Aftermath instead of just the Aftermath issue, whatever, I don't know. It belonged, but it didn't quite belong. It wasn't the same. Anyways, guys, this is my review of Invasion. Honestly, I swear to God, I wish I could have gotten it up an entire month and a half earlier when I first heard WB was going to do this, but it is what it is. Anyways, guys, subscribe. Comic Book University is free tuition. You can't beat that. Anyways, Professor Bell, Comic Book University. Guys, class dismissed.